Hi, I'm your least favorite local, Shiny and Pheasant, Brendan.
And I'd let Dragapult beat me up anytime. Jake.
And of course, this is Soundproof. Thanks for joining us again this week. We tried something a little bit new with our intro. Shout out to Jake for his creative prowess. And we're going to jump right into our episode 23 here. We've got some exciting stuff planned and exciting stuff. We are going to be joined in the second half of our show by none other than Alessio Yuree Boschetto himself. And we'll be talking about all things format rotation, VGC UU, Series 6, and things like that. And it's going to be a good week, Jake.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. So we'll start out as we are contractually bound to do with the Dash 23 Mons this week, which I actually didn't even get a chance to look over. I'm just kind of like peeking at them right now. So you are getting my unadulterated reactions to Ekans,
Your
which I
visceral
feel nothing
reaction to
towards.
Ekans. I kind of like Ekans because, like,
We
purple,
could snake.
theme.
Oh,
No,
I
I
thought
hate
it was
snakes.
just because
Actually, like,
no, no,
snakes,
no. But
gross,
like
ew.
snake is like the name is like
Oh,
backwards
well,
snake.
yeah. I
I
do
think
kind of
that's
like
funny.
that. And
I
also, I
think that's
love
funny.
Jesse and James, and Ekans was, like, one of their
That's
first,
true.
like, mascots,
They
so
are funny.
that is the extent of
Ekans.
my opinion on Ekans.
Yeah, I don't really care about Ekans. I remember being before Pokédex entries turned into like unadulterated nightmare fuel. I was always concerned that Ekans like ate eggs from Pidgey and Spearow. That was
Oh,
like one of
yeah.
the first ones that kind of alluded to the fact that Pokemon are the animals in that universe.
Right.
So yeah, there's Ekans. 123 is Scyther, which is actually interesting. I like never like really cared about Scyther. Like it's kind of cool. It has sword arms and stuff like that. But it was one of the first shiny Pokemon that was released in Masters. So all of a sudden, I really had to care about it, and now I have a shiny Scyther in Masters.
Shiny Scyther's been out in Go for a while too, but I never got one, so I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like my one of my. This is weird, but one of the things I associate Scyther with the most is I forget if this is in Stadium 1 or 2, but it's the mini game where you have to like cut the log at the line, and it's like
Uh
Scyther
huh.
and Pinsir.
Oh, I hate that.
I
Yeah,
hate that
that's
game
the
too.
worst.
It's like
Yeah,
Scyther makes me think of it.
that was one of the worst. Yeah, that
It's
is
like
one
I
of the
think it's a
worst.
fine game. I'm just terrible at it, and
No,
so
I don't like
therefore
it.
I hate
Like
it.
reaction time is such a cop out for like a game design. Just be faster.
Yeah.
All right, 223 is Remoraid. Okay, Remoraid. So when I first played Silver and Gold, I was like, why does it only learn beams? And then I didn't realize that it was like originally designed to look exactly like a gun. I
Yeah.
had no idea. Like, did you see like the lost version of it when all that the data mine from like the
Uh,
old Gen 2 leaked, and it just like it looks like a gun, and it
yeah,
makes
and
so
like
much more sense when it actually looks like a gun.
it also makes sense when you like because artillery's in the name. Like that's
Right,
how I always justified it. I also
right.
I like Remrite a lot because it's part of like one of my favorite like evolution methods in the franchise.
Hmm.
Like if you level up a Mantike with Remrite in the party, it evolves into Mantine. I think that's really cool.
Right. Yeah, that's neat. There were a lot more of those in the later gens, but yeah, Remoraid
Yeah,
was cool. I think Octillery also like it looked a lot more like a cannon or a tank or something like that before it
yeah.
turned into just like a stupid looking four-legged octopus. Um,
Quadrupus,
Quadrupus. I was
Tetrapus. There we go.
Tetrapus. Yep. 423 this week. Oh no, no, 323.
Three.
323. I almost skipped over the Hoenn. How could I do that? Is Camerupt, which is a cool Pokemon. I thought like Fire Ground was really cool at the time, and it's
Yeah,
actually still kind of a cool typing. It's like a super strong offensive stab combination. Only like it kind of sucks stat wise,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
know.
Camerupt was the first shiny I found, like naturally in a Pokemon game, and it was in
Mhm.
Black 2, and so I've liked it a lot since then. I think the shiny's
It's a
really
cool
cool.
shiny.
Yeah.
That's the black one, right? It's
Yep.
black.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's neat.
I think it's cool. It has a nice. I always like the cries. The Camerupt has a cool cry too.
What is it? Can you tell me what it sounds like?
Oh lord, it's like
Ugh,
no, it's like
like that.
or something like that. Like it doesn't sound that disgusting. It like obviously that was just me like making sounds in
Oh,
my
okay.
throat, but it's
No, no,
like
no.
I, if you like play it and then like listen to me do that again, you like get what I was going for.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm not gonna listen to it now, but I will take your word for it. All right, 423. This is actually interesting. I didn't realize that like Gastron is actually like a camera-upped partner. This is the first like competitive pairing that we've
Yeah.
seen as we've
Yep.
like done these. This is
That's
so
funny.
cool.
Yeah, I like Gastrodon. I
Um,
think it's cool. I like well, okay, I like blue Gastrodon. The pink one
I was gonna say
can
which C?
east always.
East, of course.
Yeah,
We stand.
east side.
EC.
We're both from the East Coast. We are drawn to
East
East Coast
East
Gastrodon.
EC Beast C.
No, either way, I
Uh,
think it's cool. Like it's whenever I play through Gen 4, I like picking up Gastrodon because it's like water ground is like a cool typing, and if you don't
mhm.
pick Piplup, then it's like an easy water type. I don't know. It's fun. I like it.
I felt like it sucked in game though. Its stats like aren't that good.
Well, I mean, like everything sucks in game. I don't
That's
play in
not
game to
true.
like min max myself. I just have fun.
Some things are crazy in game. 523 this week is Zebstrika, which is like probably like pretty low on my list of Pokemon. Like it's definitely finds its way down there.
Yeah, like it's a cool concept, and like I think aesthetically it's neat. But if you like look at its stats or like its move pool or like anything that has
Or
available
its
to it
face.
competitively, it's just like really disappointing in like pretty much
Yeah.
every way.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just not I think it was neat because it was one of those it was like around the time that the design of Pokemon started to have much more like diverse move pools, and it
Uh-huh.
had Overheat, which was like kind of unheard of for like an electric type to start getting a move like Overheat.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting, I thought as well. I think Manectric also gets those fire
Yeah.
type moves, but
Yeah, it does.
when like Gen 1, it was just like your water types, you only get these water type moves, and like Gen 2 is like your water types, you get these water type moves, and then eventually, and I feel like Zebstrika is one of the Pokemon that I associate with that, is like the move pool started to diversify a little bit and become more like flavor based.
Hmm.
So that was cool. 623 is Golurk. Okay, I've like vaguely recommending that we talked about Golett last time, and we wanted to talk about how Golurk just like flies around with its
Yeah.
freaking rocket feet.
Golurk is so
It's,
funny. I love it so
it's
much.
I just don't understand it. Like, why does it have freaking rocket feet?
It's like
And why isn't it a steel type? Ugh.
it's a giant golem that can like turn its feet into a rocket booster, and it's also a horse. Did you know that it's a horse?
It is a horse,
It
yeah.
was one
It
of the
was one of the
first.
first things to learn high horsepower,
Yeah,
yeah.
like in Sun and Moon, it was only like Mudsdale, Mudbray, and then Snorlax, and
Yeah.
then Golurk. Those are the three. Um,
It's just like a true mockery of a Pokemon.
yeah. It's it really is.
I just remember in the Victini movie where like whichever is flying around, there's a Golurk that's like always fighting Zekrom and Reshiram, and
Yeah,
it's like big enough that you're like, damn, that Golurk actually looks pretty cool. It's like flying around and it's going after Zekrom, and then
right.
it gets like its poo kicked in and like knocked to the ground and stuff like that. Man, Golurk's a joke.
It's like 9 feet
All right,
tall. I think I remember
yeah,
looking
it's
it up.
supposed
It's
to be
very
big,
big.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, 723 is Dartrix, which is easily the worst of that evolution, and I think the worst starter stage from that entire generation, and like one of the worst starter stages in the entire game.
Oh my.
God,
How do
what
you
an
really
ugly
feel?
Pokemon. Dartrix is terrible, dude. Like, have you seen it? Holy God,
I
it's
know I
like
have.
Quilladin and then Dartrix. Quilladin.
I kind of like Quilladin. Quilladin is on like the like there's like a spectrum of like things that look stupid from things that like look really stupid and I hate it to like things that look really
Hmm.
stupid but like okay that's kind of cute. And I think Quilladin falls more
Hmm.
towards that end, but Dartrix is like why?
Quilladin hurts me.
I kind of
And
like
it's
it.
just like I feel like I must have talked about this at some point. Is that you can very clearly see that like there are certain Pokemon designs, and maybe these like they're designed completely separately from each other. Where like you have like just like you have Charmander and you have Charizard, right? And you're like, okay,
Uh-huh.
now we need to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And I feel like Quilladin is just the most egregious example of that. It's
I can
so
see
terrible.
that. Yeah.
Ugh.
It's
At
literally
least
just like
Dartrix has like an independent design in mind.
it's like Rowlet's face with a
Yeah,
body half the size of Tsuchiwai. And that's all they
right.
did.
God. All right, and the last one for this week, our Gen 8 Pokemon, is Corviknight, which is a cool one. I think we talked a little bit about how this is like kind of one of the more important of the early route birds,
Yeah,
alongside like Talonflame and perhaps the one that learns close combat, that is Staraptor. Um,
Staraptor.
yeah, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, those are the only three that have
So,
ever had some kind of like competitive relevancy as far as VGC goes.
yeah,
I like it. I think it's really cool. I
yeah,
used
it's neat.
Corviknight on my playthrough of Shield. I think it was really fun. I like how it can play competitively. I think it's cool design. I have nothing bad to say about it.
Hey, you were a big stand of it, like right off the bat when the format launched, I thought, right?
Yeah.
You're using the bulk up set a lot in
Yep.
DOU.
Yeah, I
I
really
remember
liked
that
bulk up body
vaguely. Yeah,
press.
that was cool. Two fighting moves on a bird.
We
All right, so that's gonna wrap up the Dash 23s for the week. That was a pretty good. That was a pretty good group. I
yeah.
think that was fun.
We had a nice mix
We
of
don't
like good
always.
stuff and then stuff to make fun of, so that's nice.
Yeah, like Golurk. Freaking joke. All right, let's hop into the ladder. We are still in Series 5 on the ladder.
Yeah.
It took me a minute to actually see that because the first team on the ladder has 5 Series 6 Pokemon in an Excadrill, so I was like, oh my god, it's Series 6 already.
I mean, the
And then I
series,
was like,
same
all
with
right,
the Series 2 team. It's like, it's
yeah,
not Series 2, the second team on the ladder. It's Whimsicott
right.
and 5 UU mods.
Oh, I
Anyway,
didn't even look at that. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. Anyway, point being, we are still in Series 5. We haven't switched over to Series 6 on the ladder yet. And I think there is at least one big Series 5 tournament that's happening this weekend.
Yeah, it's
Um,
the Rose Tower, whatever. The Rose
that's
Tower
right. Yep, I'll
thing.
be casting that. Tune in.
I
I don't know if
forget,
I'm allowed to say that, but it's
I
fine.
forget what the name, what is it called?
It's their version of the invitational, right? Because
I think
this is
so,
the one
yeah.
that you had to qualify to play in
Yeah.
with their circuit points or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is like the cool one. This is like the NBI, the new version of the NBI.
Right.
Um, that's the Nugget Bridge Invitational. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I shouldn't have shortened it. All right, number one on the ladder this week is, of course, a Galarian Corsola team that also has Grimmsnarl, Corviknight, Amoonguss, Primarina, and Excadrill.
As is tradition. I want to know why. Like, what does it do?
I
Because
don't
like
know.
it's
Well, it's always done the same thing. It just like checks.
nothing is the thing it does.
It's just like you play to it as a win condition. Like there are certain combinations of Pokemon that just like can't kill it.
Yeah.
If you use like the Calm Mind Strength Sap set, you can't die. You Calm
Oh, is
Mind
that what it
Strength
does?
Sap and Will-O-Wisp, and you can just like checkmate things. With EVLA because it's so thick.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I literally have never seen it played in VGCs. Like I didn't even know Calm Mind was a set it ran.
Well, it's like a thing in singles, isn't it? So people were immediately just like, "Oh, I can just use it kind of like it gets used in
I don't
singles."
think Calm Mind was a thing
Um,
in singles.
oh,
Like
okay.
that's what it does though. Just be really fat. I think it ran like
Yeah.
Nightshade, Wisp, Stealth Rock, and Strength Sap or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, I think that's what it
Yeah,
is. It probably has more relevance than Cursula does.
yeah, I would imagine.
Um, yeah.
Didn't you
So
play?
yeah, that's
No, didn't you play like Grass Move Cursula at Dallas or something? I
I
like
played
vaguely remember
grass
that.
and water move Cursula. It had both. It had both, and I'm telling you, like that was my auto loss. I didn't have like a good enough way to deny redirection, trick room plus Corsola in the back, and like I just won because the other player just didn't identify that Cursula was an auto win against my team, and I ended up playing bad for the rest of the tournament anyway. But like to lose, I think he finished 1-9
Oh
or one
no.
and eight or 1-9 or something like that, or maybe two. He had 2 wins, but I was just like, I remember looking back and being like, oh dear God. Um, he was a nice dude. His team was cool. Could say Cursula. The next team on the ladder, number two this week, is kind of an interesting combination of Pokemon that I've definitely never seen before. Is Whimsicott, Barraskewda, and Alchemy, and a Chandelure, and the football thing, Passimian,
the
and
f-
Dracozolt.
the football thing. This is kind of cool. This definitely looks like it could be a Series 6 team. If it
It could
wasn't for the
be.
Whimsicott.
It could
Um,
just be a Talonflame instead.
True, yeah. I
Boom.
like. I question what Barraskewda does, other than like be really fast.
Yeah,
Like I can
and
kind of
and
see what the rest of it is meant to be. Like Whimsicott Dracozolt obviously is good. Like we know what that does. Um, Alchemy we've seen on like the Lapras teams before with Decorate. Like I don't hate it. It's kind of cute.
I feel
Chandelure.
like I've
Yeah.
seen Passimian Chandelure as like a combination
Really?
before. Like that's not the first time that I've seen that combination of Pokemon on the
Huh.
same team.
Okay.
I don't know. Take that for what it's worth. The third team on the ladder is definitely not a Series 6 team. It is a team featuring Dragapult and Mimikyu, Primarina, Ferrothorn, Incineroar, and Tyranitar. So there are
Yeah.
four Pokemon that you will definitely not be seeing in Series 4. Although Mimikyu kind of got the short end of the stick in that regard. Series 6, rather. Did I say Series 4? I
You
meant Series
did.
6.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
I
I like
corrected.
this is kind of reminds me of some of the teams from like a month or two ago with like kind of like the triple ghost teams. I know there's just two this time.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
exactly what it is. Yeah.
yeah, but it's probably like weakness policy Dusclops with like sneak Mimikyu or something like that. It's cool. There's a nice trick room mode on this one too. I assume the Mimikyu there has trick room for the last four
Yeah.
lines. It's neat.
I feel like we stopped seeing teams like this because these sorts of teams kind of get like beat up by Sucker Punch, uh,
Cinderace.
the bunny Cinderace. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sucker Punch Cinderace kind of like takes these things to task,
Yeah.
um, and kind of pushed them out of the meta because you can just kind of like blow through it. But yeah, that's those. I always liked that kind of archetype, so that's cool.
Hmm.
The number four team on the ladder is a team of Charizard Clefairy, which I think is a combination you'll see a lot in Series 6.
Yeah.
But accompanied by some departing friends, including Rillaboom and Cineroar, Whimsicott, and then there's an Urshifu.
What do you think Viershifu is here? I think that
I
like
think
we
it's
can
water.
always just look it up, but
No, because
it's
that's
always
probably
interesting
Sunny
to
Day
me to try to
Whimsicott.
figure that out.
I
I'll
think it's
open the
Sunny Day
replay and see.
Whimsicott.
But...
I think they tend to be water nowadays. Like, isn't that kind of generally accepted as the one that's a little bit better?
Is it?
Um, I don't know, but it could also be dark because it's the dark one. Because I can see Dusclops giving that team a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. To me,
Um,
Wicked Blow is a better move than Surging Strikes, but I guess that's not the
I
only
think
like deciding
like the
factor.
typing is important.
Yeah, yeah.
The fifth team on the ladder this week is a team of Chandelure, Rillaboom, Clefairy, Cinderace, Milotic, and Toxtricity, which is actually like probably the best example of what like a meta team looks like right now that we have in this top 10. Well,
Yeah.
except for maybe this team at 8. But those are like surprisingly that's like a pretty meta Pokemon. Although you could have fooled me if you had told me that there was going to be a day that two starters and a Toxtricity was going to be like a meta team. Holy moly!
No, like this kind of looks like what I think John Evans used in Players Cup. I know he had Cinderace, Clefairy, Milotic. I
Yeah,
think Cinderace is really
Rillaboom
cool.
too.
Did he? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Cinderace is really cool. I'm a big fan of it. It's like Greninja, but not terrible. In that
Well, I mean,
you
Greninja
can
would be fine too if you could Dynamax it.
and if it had Airstream, I think that's the big thing.
Does
Like
it not?
I don't know. Maybe it has bounce, but
It probably still gets Max Strike too.
well, yeah, I'm sure you could run Max Strike with
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think Airstream is really cool on it. I think it has some really cool options outside of Max too. Like High Jump Kick is really good if people run that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just cool. I like this team too. It looks fun.
Yeah, and there's similar combinations on the next team that does have the Toxtricity and the Cinderace, but this time alongside a more hyper offensive
Yeah,
combination of Pokemon with Braviary, Whimsicott, Indeedee Male, and Dracovish.
this is like blatantly hyper offensive.
I
It's
am
like
going to punch you in the
yeah,
mouth.
and you're gonna
Yeah,
like it. It's
yeah.
cool though. This is like if you were to make a list of things that hyper offense has, like Psychic Terrain, Tailwind, Dracovish, and
Yep.
like anti-intimidate. Like this team has all of them. It's really cool.
Boom, got it. Yeah. That's like the hyper offense in a team.
Right.
Like the whole concept is right there.
Yeah.
The number 7 is another very hyper offensive team. This one I feel like captures another aspect of hyper offense, which is Chandelure to patch your Trick Room matchup. And it has Whimsicott, Cinderace, Togekiss, Chandelure. Inteleon makes an appearance,
Yeah.
and then Toxtricity is also there.
Yeah. Again, kind of cool. Toxtricity is a Pokemon that I think is really neat, like design wise. I think they did a really good job capturing like that kind of like punk rock aesthetic they wanted. Um,
Hmm.
but it's like a little disappointing when you try to use it in game. But like I think the way that these teams have been kind of building around it is neat because like it's like Overdrive is a really strong move. I think people
Hmm.
underestimate how strong Overdrive is, even without something like a Life Orb or Specs or whatever.
Yeah,
So I think it's
I
cool.
think there's a lot to be said for Pokemon doing damage when they're not Dynamax
Yeah,
too.
for
Like
sure.
that's like you get so much value out of that, which is why Urshifu is so good.
Yeah.
And we saw somebody make a run through Players Cup with Drapion and stuff like that, where like if you can get value out of damage, or get value out of like or offensive value out of non-Dynamax Pokemon. Like I knew what I was trying to say, I just
Right.
couldn't get it out. You can make that go a long way for you in this
Yep.
sort of format. Number 8, this is something that I would definitely call like a meta-looking team at this point. It
Hmm.
features Porygon Z, which is annoyingly really strong and in the meta. Um, Magnezone, which is honestly one of his biggest checks, and then Urshifu, Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Clefairy. And Clefairy, Porygon is just going to like define Series 6, I
I
think.
was gonna say that Clef PZ is gonna be scary good in
Mm,
Series 6, and I think like trying to figure out how to deal with that is gonna be a big part of the format. Um,
I agree.
just those max strikes are stupid strong, and it has the same kind of utility as Airstream does in like the opposite way. So like it's even like kind of supporting itself as it clicks attacks, and it's just ugh, I hate
Right, and then
it.
it can even further support itself with Max Darkness.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah,
I think they're like pretty standard. The standard set is also with Trick Room as well.
yeah,
Um, so you can either reverse or set Trick Room if you felt like you needed to, which
right.
it gives it utility, which is
I
ridiculous. And
know,
it's got like more bulk than you think it does too, which is
especially
insane.
with
It's
Clef
Porygon
next
2.
to it.
It's so freaking scary. Um, Luckily, Dusclops stayed around, or else we'd have serious problems with
Yeah,
Porygon Z. But
yeah.
for now, it's just going to be only a minor terror. The number 9 team on the ladder
He's back.
is an unfortunate
Ah!
combination that anybody who is laddered since what was 2018 he started to ladder with
No, it
that
was
stuff.
17. Was
Oh,
the
it was
start?
17.
Yeah.
It's a combination of Lycanroc and a Sand Setter, and many of you know what I'm talking about
Dun dun
already.
dun
But there's kind of
dun.
this like notorious ladder hero named Bwaha Koff that
Yes.
will lead without fail Lycanroc and Sand and click Rock Slide twice.
So good. I love it.
um, and he's apparently found them. They've found themselves in the top 10
Yeah, this is
of
actually
the
him
ladder
too.
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a team of in that combination Lycanroc, Tyranitar, and then Indeedee female, Cobalion, Dragapult, and Arcanine. So I don't know.
What do you
I
think
wish
the
you luck
chances are that
in
that's
dodging him.
justified Arcanine?
Justified Arcanine. I don't know why. Does Lycanroc learn beat up?
Dragapult.
Yeah, but does Lycanroc also learn it?
I don't know. There's a Dragapult there. That's
I
not
don't
the
know.
point.
I don't know. I think he probably only beats up the Cobalion. I don't think it's justified with Arcanine.
I wonder if it
Would
does
be
learn
my
beat up.
guess. That'd be pretty cool if it did.
Anyway.
Anyway, last team on the ladder we're going to talk about this week. This is kind of like what good stuffs is looking like these days.
Yeah.
Team of Incineroar, Dragapult, Amoonguss, which again surprisingly made the cut. I don't know if I've said that yet, but that's a weird one to think about, like high percentage Pokemon getting lopped off and it sticking around. But
Yeah.
anyway, Incineroar, Dragapult, Amoonguss, Magnezone, Togekiss, and Urshifu.
Magnezone's picking up a lot. I don't. It didn't really see much use until I
Hmm.
know some people used it in like the Players Cup qualifier. And that was
Yep.
the first time I like knew it got a lot of use. But I kind of like that it's picking up. It's a cool one.
Yeah, it does some interesting stuff, and with Excadrill kicked out of the format, we might get to see that around a little bit more,
Yeah.
which is cool. It like will Steel Spike and then Body Press you after it
Mm-hmm.
finishes its Dynamax, which is kind of neat. And Electric obviously is always a strong attacking type,
Yeah.
and there are hardly any Electric types around, which is why even Toxtricity is getting usage these days. So cool Pokemon. We might get to see that a lot. Oh, and the other thing, it checks Porygon too, Porygon Z, which is insanely important as we go into Series 6.
Yeah.
So alrighty. The last thing we're going to touch on this week before we jump into our little chat with Yuree here is talk about some of the Players' Cup results.
Yeah.
And we had the pleasure of getting to watch that this past weekend, and of course it was won by Santino Tarquinio with that Cole team, which I know Jake was
Colossal.
really excited about.
I love it.
And it was really a treat to watch that on stream. I thought he played it so well. Um, and I don't know, just like his game plans were just so smart all the time. And I think it's so hard to play a game, a team like that, where everybody in the room like knows what you're trying to do,
Right.
and then you still outplay everybody. So like super impressive
Like it's even more impressive
run
too
from him.
because he used that in like the AC to qualify. He used it in the qualifying tournament, and he used it in the
Mhm.
finals. And he like didn't.
Was
I
it
think
the
he.
same exact team though?
I don't know. I mean, I just meant colossal in general.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
But like, and like
So people
it
prepped
was.
for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like reasonable to expect that people like prepped for a possible colossal, and he still dropped
Hmm.
like what 2 or 3 games the entire tournament, like
It's
games,
unbelievable.
not sets. Like
Yeah,
mind you, that,
it's
like he
unbelievable.
just ran through this tournament, which is
Right.
really cool. I really like. I don't know. I've been a very vocal proponent of the like Moon Series Lunadon team. That's like one of my
Mm,
favorite teams in the past couple of years,
mm,
and Santino's one who built that originally. I think not. I think I
yep.
like 99% sure
He
that
did.
was his. Um,
Yep.
and then now he's running Colossal and winning with it, which is really cool because I love Colossal. And like, I have to be a Santino stan now. Not that I don't want to be, not that I wasn't before, but like it's like official now.
Right.
I am a Santino
No,
stan.
I think this is a Stanty Stan podcast. That's
Yeah.
fine. I'm fine with that. I'm on board. I'm totally on board. The one scary thing, I'm not sure. I is just giving Colossal momentum as
Yeah.
we go towards Series 6, where things that can deal with it are being removed,
Uh huh.
is quite a scary prospect to me. I don't know.
Bring it on.
That's a lot to take in. Uh, Santi was able to defeat Maluka, is I believe his online
Yeah.
handle. G Sock Lee, the runner up there, who was using a team of Clefairy, Dragapult, Primarina, Incineroar, Ferrothorn, and Urshifu. So pretty cool combination of Pokemon there. I think Clefairy is one of those Pokemon that's so incredibly high skill cap that it's always a
Yes.
pleasure
Yeah.
to watch people play with it. Um, Watching people use Clefairy, where it's like, okay, he's gonna click follow me, and then you get like Helping Hand Phantasmed or something like that, are some of the coolest plays to
Yeah.
watch. Or like, you catch people targeting poorly and like protect with your Clefairy or something like that when
Uh
they're
huh.
expecting a follow me. I think it's such a fun Pokemon to watch.
I fully agree. There are a lot of things you can do with Clefairy that are far beyond like, oh, click follow me every turn. And I think seeing people find those ways to use Clefairy effectively is neat. I know like there have been like the quote unquote Smogon squad, like Nails and Rajan and that whole group. Now they've been a big fan of Clefairy for a while and they've used it,
For years.
yeah, pretty effectively. Like they had a lot of teams in the past. I think Nails won a regional with it.
He did, yeah. There was Virginia
17,
2017.
yeah, with the Lex. Yeah, but I think it's cool. I agree. The skill cap on Clef is way higher than you would expect it to be.
Hmm. The third place team, which was piloted by Desu, is a pretty cool, good stuffy team. I know the one wrinkle that I really liked in this team was the beat up on Dragapult,
Hmm.
but he had a team of Porygon 2, Dragapult, Primarina, Incineroar, so the triple starters there with Rillaboom, and then Terrakion.
It was
So he
also.
did kind of
No, go ahead.
he,
Sorry.
I saw him do it a couple times on stream, where he would like lead Dragapult and Terrakion, and then make you decide whether or not he was going to beat up and Dynamax his Terrakion, or
Yeah.
just Dynamax Dragapult and Phantasm Rockfall you or something like that. That's such a scary combination.
Well, I think it was helping hand Terrakion too, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It
So like
was.
that makes it even more dynamic, which I think is cool. It's like another example. Like it's similar to Colossal in that it's like a somewhat telegraphed like combo, but when you have
Hmm.
a lot more like dimensions to a combo like that, it can be really effective. I think helping hand Terrakion is like a really cool tech on that kind of team.
Yeah, I think that's super neat. It's um, it's just there are just so many different things that you could do on turn one,
Uh
including Dynamax either one, which is just like
huh.
so crazy to think about. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
The fourth place team was Conan's, who had a team of Togekiss, Dragapult, Excadrill, Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Tyranitar. I don't really want to talk about it.
Who?
um,
I don't. I
Not a
don't.
cool
I don't
dude.
think anyone
Not
got
not a
fourth
cool dude.
place.
This
I'm
is
pretty
this
sure
is
we
not
went from third
this
to
is
fifth in this tournament.
this is not a Conan stand podcast. We do stand things here, but Conan is not one of those things.
Yeah, we had one,
Um,
two, three. No one got fourth, and
yep,
now in fifth we have
unfortunate.
Yuri.
Yeah, so Yuree tied with Chris Kahn for fifth here,
Yep.
and Yuree's team was the Tokis Dragpole Rotom Wash, which I think that's the only Rotom Wash appearance, which is kind of surprising in
Hmm.
top eight. Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Excadrill, so pretty good stuffy, but that's the kind of team that Yuree's been playing for quite a while, I think.
Yeah, and Yuri's all for the last few years. He's been kind of a like the champion of the standard team. Like he was a really
Hmm.
big fake PG player in 2017. He like had the standard
Metafini.
Metagross team in 2018.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so like it's not really surprising to see him using this kind of standard stuff and still doing very well with it. I think it's cool that the kind of early format Ted combo is back here. I guess
Hmm.
it's not that it ever went anywhere, but like this is all kind of day one stuff that you might expect, but like that's kind of what Yuri's bread and butter is. Like he's just really good
Right.
at playing like good teams well, and he obviously
Right.
did that
Yeah.
here.
Totally agree. Definitely. And then of course he tied with Chris Kahn, who is using an Alola Ninetales team, which I think was
Yeah.
really cool. And um, did you see the play Pokemon tweet when he was leading Primarina and Ninetales?
No.
Oh my god, it's so funny. They like made a Zoolander reference because they're like two like beautiful Pokemon.
Uh huh.
They made that reference about like, is there anything else besides being really, really, really incredibly good looking or something like that, which is really funny. I have to go find it. I'm like not doing it justice, but it was
That's
really
great.
funny because I've never really seen that sort of thing from the Play Pokemon account.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was running a team of Togekiss, Cinderace, Primarina, Incineroar, Ferrothorn, and Alola Ninetales. So obviously, it's really cool to see Alola Ninetales here, given that it's a Pokemon that's definitely been significantly underused, but he clearly piloted it to great effect here. He's a really good player
Oh
too.
yeah, for sure. And one thing that I saw people talking about a lot after the Players Cup finals happened was that Ferrothorn just kind of showed up and did really well at this tournament. Like we saw
Hmm.
Maluka get second with it, and Chris is in fifth place with it. But I think it's interesting with Ninetales too, because if you dodge fire types, like if you like throw up Aurora Veil, then your Ferrothorn
Hmm.
clicks Iron Defense a couple times. It's like impossible to break through it. And so I
Yeah.
wonder if that's how he played a little bit with that, or if that was like a game plan of his. But the Ninetales is neat. It has some unique like support options. It has Icy Wind and Encore, obviously Aurora
Hmm.
Veil. You can shut off weather if you need to with hail, so it's neat. I like it.
Yeah, it's a cool Pokemon. Definitely. Duck Pond at 7. And he did tie with Julian Martinez, which is a LATAM player whose handle I don't know off the top of my head. I'm
Me
so
neither. I
sorry.
know.
But Duck Pond was running a team of Porygon 2, Dragapult, Primarina, Incineroar, Rillaboom,
And
and
Trachean.
Trachean. And I know he used Lapras in the qualifiers, so I have to think that a lot of these Pokemon are pretty similar to what he did use. But the one thing about Duck Pond's team, and he tweeted about it, is that he was running high horsepower on his Rillaboom, knowing that Santee had Colossal. But he never played against Santee.
Yeah, that's funny. It's the same six as Desu, so I wonder if they like work together on
It
that.
could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're both Italian.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other seventh place team, which is piloted by Julian Martinez, is a team of Amoonguss, Dragapult, Gyarados, Incineroar, Toxtricity, and Urshifu. So definitely, Pokemon that we are not shocked to see up near the top there.
I'm a little surprised to see Gyarados there. Like it hasn't. It's always
Gyarados is
kind of
good.
been around, but not
It's a
really.
grass type.
Yeah, Gyarados is a grass type now. I only say that because it hasn't really been used too much. But I do think it's neat, and I like this team a lot. It's kind of another example of kind of Toxtricity sliding into a team well, I think, and I'm a fan.
Definitely. Yeah, so that's going to be our top 8, and we're just going to hit on some of the things that I think we found interesting in the top 16. And the first one is actually one of the ninth place teams that's piloted by Roxon. And the team is Grimmsnarl, Dracozolt, Gastrodon, Arcanine, Amoonguss, and Corviknight. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about this team is it is a Series 6 team.
Oh yeah.
Every single Pokemon carries over, and he did really well in the Series 5 tournament. And it's just like a cool team construction. It's one of those teams that plays incredibly slowly
Hmm.
to like a Corviknight win condition, or like like Dynamax Gastrodon win condition when you max Quake 3 times and then you can't kill it anymore. So it's really cool in a team that's like or in a format, a metagame that's very offensive because of Dynamax. Like being able to pilot something that's a more defensive team so effectively is super interesting.
Yeah. It's like 5 months that play really well to that kind of slow play style, and then a Dracozolt. Not Dracozolt. That is
Hmm.
Dracozolt. Which is kind of
It
fun.
is Dracozolt.
It sure is. I really like an immediate offensive option on teams like that, just to kind of mix it up sometimes. And I think Dracozolt's a good
Hmm.
pick here, so it's cool.
Hmm. Definitely. The next team I wanted to hit on is the team that was being piloted by Hamstermania, David Kutesh. And it was just like he just had it's a very far departure from what he was running in the qualifiers when he was running like a more standardish Sun team with
Uh,
the weakness policy and Incineroar, to a team that is just like entirely built around coaching Cobalion, and it's just like a whole bunch of things you can coach and a Togekiss. Because I think I remember seeing that he was running like Life Orb, Corviknight, and stuff like that.
oh
So he was
my.
trying to just sort of like use coaching to make things hard to take down and
Yeah.
also like do a lot of damage. But it seems like in effect it wasn't quite as good after I believe he had like a pretty dominant run through qualifiers.
Yeah, I think he did. Um, like I get what he was going for, but it just seems like
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't the best idea in
Yeah,
general.
and I mean like he's such like a dynamic team builder that,
Yeah.
he's going to have hits and misses and
Hmm.
stuff like that, but unfortunately for him it feels like maybe this was a miss, although it's definitely a super cool team.
Yeah.
I'd definitely like to try some games with it,
Yeah.
but maybe he judged the meta wrong or something like that.
Speaking of
Um
misses, there's a Drapion in
speak
this tournament.
Yeah, he ran that in qualifiers. I
Right.
think it might actually be the same six, the Drapion, or Drapion.
I
I
don't
think it's
know.
Drapion, isn't it? Alongside Lily Cole,
Yep.
which is really cool. So it's a neat team. I think I touched on it briefly that Drapion is one of those Pokemon that like with Sniper and Crit Boost can still do like a lot of damage
Hmm.
even outside of Dynamax, which is important, obviously. Yeah, cool. All
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
So that's gonna wrap up our Players Cup coverage, unless there was anything else you wanted to touch on, Jake.
No, I think we got it all.
Um, yeah. So again, congrats to Santi who won Fake Worlds this year. It's definitely like a big achievement. This is like the biggest achievement that will be handed out this year. So
Yeah.
it's not the same, but you can still call yourself the best player in this format. I don't think there's any arguing that this is the biggest tournament and most important tournament that we'll have. So
Yeah.
we stand Santi here now. Congratulations to him. And we are going to jump over and have a conversation with another Players Cup finisher. So we're going to step away for just a few seconds, and when we return, we will be joined by Alessio Yuree Boschetto. So stay tuned. Hey trainers, welcome back, and thanks for sticking around for the second half of this week's episode of. I say this week as though we're releasing them weekly. For this edition of the Soundproof podcast, and we are now joined by our favorite Italian player. I'm sorry to the Italians that listen to that, Alessio Yuree Boschetto, who's going to be joining us for the second half of the podcast, and I'll let Jake do an introduction for us.
Like honestly, if you don't know who Yuri is at this point, what are you doing?
Hmm.
But on the off chance that you don't know him by name, he won the Oceania International Challenge. Wait, Challenge Champion, whatever.
Championship.
Australian Nationals in 2018. He's a champion there. He's won a couple regionals in Europe. He won the Players Cup Invitational recently, and he placed fifth overall in the whole Players Cup spiel that just finished. He's had a day two invite for every world since 2016. Obviously, one of the greatest players currently. So, Yuri, thank you for joining us, and welcome to Soundproof.
Hey, thank you for having me.
He needs no introduction, but of course we'll give him one anyway. And as I believe we mentioned in the first half of the podcast, I'm just going to make a note to mention that in the first half of the podcast.
Oh my god.
What we're going to be talking a little bit about is some of the new metagame that has just been bestowed upon us and some of the kind of interesting topics that we can delve into as a result of some new precedents that are being set. And I think it's kind of interesting because over the past couple of years, after things were, like relatively static for a bunch of years, maybe starting in 2013, it was pretty predictable on a year in, year out basis, what our formats were going to look like, when the season was going to start, where the regionals were going to be. And now everything is starting to change and continuing to change, where, it sort of started with Sun Moon Ultra Series in 2019, and all of a sudden, we are now getting a pretty consistent diet of rotating metagames. So I guess I'll start, Yuree, just by kind of asking you your thoughts on just kind of like rotating metagames in general. Do you think that this is a good thing or a bad thing overall?
In general, I would say it's a pretty good thing. Formats could get pretty stale after some time, even though personally I loved post-Worlds formats. But it can be well done and it can be pretty badly done, which, some of them have been well done and some of them have been more debatable, I think.
The worst done one was 2018 when they just didn't give us a post-Worlds format, which I will be angry about forever.
Perhaps you meant Ultra Series?
No. Ew.
So Yuri, when you say like the way that they're done, do you feel like you're just kind of like observing that some formats happen to be better than others, or do you think that, the formats that are being handed down to us could be balanced a little bit better?
I think one of my main issues is, other than the last minute announcement of how we were going to have series back in the 2019 season, it was well done. We knew from the start how the season would develop precisely, and we could plan around it. And also the formats lasted longer. The shortest one back then was 3 months for Moon Series, I believe. Whereas right now we're often having only 2 months of a format, which is way too short. And on top of that, we're often not knowing about the format change until like very, very close to the actual date. We only discovered about Series 6 and all the bans, which is unprecedented, about a week ago, and it's coming into effect in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I would say that's a negative, to not have knowledge of how things are going to look like.
So yeah, like say what you want about 2019, whether you liked how the formats played out or not, but the way they ran logistically, I think, was super smart. Like we found out at Worlds, which is way earlier than we usually find out about formats, that this is going to be the format for this coming year. It's going to be split up in these dates. These are the Pokemon that are going to be legal, items, the megas, whatever, and we could like plan for that ahead of time. I agree with you there. I don't really mind, because like in the scope of like the series now, we got like 2 weeks notice for Series 6, which isn't a long time, like in by an objective sense, but it's like a quarter. Like there's only like well, how am I going to say this? It was like 75% of the way through the current format, if you say that each series has been a couple months so far, which I think is the case. And I don't know. It feels like that's enough time considering the timescale that we're operating on now. But if you just take it as like a raw numbers kind of thing, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I think in that sense it makes sense. It's not a long, it's not a huge deal, and also it is kind of a dry moment with not really having official tournaments and all.
Right.
So it's not as huge of a deal. But it mostly plays into, I would really like to know, let's say on January 1st, we're going to be playing this way throughout the year, rather than having to discover step by step. Even though they couldn't really have done this super well with the DLC anyway. Yeah. And Pokemon being released with Pokemon Home, I believe. But just in general, more early knowledge is always good to have, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is a year where we've had a lot more like change in what's even available to us than any other year. Because like you said, we had Home, which brought a few Pokemon back and brought some abilities and moves and that kind of stuff. And then we had Isle of Armor, and we're going to have Crown Tundra sometime in the next few months or so. And so like even just within the scope of 2020, we're having a lot of changes. So I guess they figured now is a time to kind of implement a system like this where it could be more easily changed. or that the format can be more easily changed when you have these big releases. I guess that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess you could also argue that they're a little bit more willing to make some of the, I guess, the interim changes, we'll say, because obviously there were kind of big sweeping changes when Home came out and when the DLCs are going to drop. But it seems like, especially with Series 6, they've been a little bit more inclined to add some of those smaller changes in, because it seems like in a lot of respects this has been kind of like dubbed an experimental year, or kind of like a lost year in a lot of in a lot of senses.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess for those not like fully aware yet, Yuree, do you want to kind of explain what Series 6 is going to be and how different it's going to
we
be?
probably should have done that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so Series 6 is the format that we are going to have starting September 1st, presumably for 2 months until Crown Tundra arrives. And the difference from Series 6 to Series 5 is that they took the top 10 from Battle Stadium in Series 5 in both singles and doubles, which
the most
is
hilarious
something
part.
Yeah.
something we might want to talk about later. And they just outright banned all of those Pokemon, which is a total of 16 Pokemon since there was a bit of overlap.
Yeah.
And that shakes up the metagame pretty significantly, I think. Well, for obvious reasons.
Right. As for reference, I wrote down those 16. They are Venusaur, Gyarados, Porygon 2, Tyranitar, Torkoal, Hippowdon, Magnezone, Togekiss, Excadrill, Whimsicott, Incineroar, Mimikyu, Rillaboom, Cinderace, Indeedee, and Dragapult. So all 16 of those are just gone for a couple months. And like, if you've been paying attention to VGC this year, or you even have just like a single finger on the pulse, you'll notice like a lot of really popular Pokemon there. So it's going to be drastically different, which is kind of cool. It's going to be fun to like see what happens. But again, it's kind of strange because we don't know if that'll last. So like we'll have this 2 months of this meta where, you know, any team built in Series 6, if those Pokemon come back, the team's probably not going to be usable anymore. So it's like a very temporary thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That again plays into we really don't know what their plans are,
Mhm.
and it would be really nice to know right now.
Right.
But it is what it is.
Hippowdon getting banned is just hilarious. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there are some that are like very obviously singles bans. Like Hippowdon and Mimikyu are the two that jump
Right.
out. It's kind of funny.
Hey, Hippowdon, do not put disrespect on Hippowdon's name. It got top 8 at Bochum Regionals back in January. So
Okay.
It's a force.
clearly deserved the ban.
It's a force in the metagame.
Sand force in the metagame.
So Yuree, assuming that we're gonna kind of stick with this sort of rotating format, which shows no signs of slowing down, what do you think the optimal number of rotations is on a given year?
I think realistically what Sun, Moon, and Ultra did is pretty much perfect. You get one post-Worlds format. It kind of sucks that you don't get an actual post-Worlds of the Worlds format, but, you know, it is what it is. Then you get one format for the start of the year, and then you get one other format that you have enough time to play before Worlds to actually get accustomed to and for it to develop properly. It will usually mean that 2 international championships are played in it. Ultra Series had Berlin Internationals and Columbus Internationals played in it, and so that gave it time to actually develop properly.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much that hits the sweet spot for me, I think, regardless of like how good the formats themselves are, which is completely unrelated.
Well, I think the one thing about the restricted format with Sun, Moon, Ultra is that they kind of stacked on each other, which is like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the context of our circuit where you are kind of like building towards Worlds the entire year, makes a ton of sense. So in that respect, like I totally agree with you that like having formats that could realistically build on each other makes a lot of sense. But I don't think that's something that we can expect necessarily, you know, every year, and especially now that we've actually taken a step backwards in development here with like just banning out all the good Pokemon. So do you feel like that's something that also contributes to what made Sun, Moon, Ultra good, or is that not something that you're really considering? You're just sort of like looking at the time period.
I think it partially made them good, made that good, but I think the time period is really what sets it for me, because I think it was like about 4 months of the format before Worlds was pretty important in my opinion. And regardless of like how the formats change, they could even like decide them on the spot. It would be nice to know in advance, like we did for Sun, Moon, and Ultra. But even if it was decided like 2 weeks earlier, it would be fine. Obviously, Sun, Moon, Ultra created kind of a perfect way to do it, just because of how things could be done, and that's not always going to be available. Like adding Z moves and then adding megas and primals and everything. But it's something that could be done with different formats. You could, in theory, you could have, for example, a format without Dynamax, and then a format.
Oh my god, please!
Yeah, please give me a format without Dynamax. Just in general.
Okay.
Just in general, give me a format without Dynamax. But yes, they could have a format without Dynamax and then a format with Dynamax. Obviously, that's only 2, so maybe just let post worlds roll around normally. I don't know. I'm not saying I have the final solution to how to. Final solution was not a great wording. I'm not saying I have the perfect solution to how to make formats, but I think having formats change every 2 months, like we've had this year, mostly, is kind of excessive, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you don't. I mean, we're not asking, and we'll probably never have a perfect format, right? But it's pretty.
Yeah.
It's at least doable to observe some of the things that are good and bad about some of the formats that we've had. So one of the things that we did want to talk about, as far as like how fast these formats rotate, is the development of metagames, and whether or not 2 months is too little time. Whether or not 4 months is too little time, what actually is an optimal amount of time for a metagame to develop? Because I've heard some people say that we could have played a format like 2015 for like 2 or 3 years and continued to observe metagame development and stuff like that. So how do you feel as far as time periods as it pertains to like metagame development?
So I think it obviously like varies by metagames. Some metagames are just more prone to continuously developing or becoming more interesting, let's say, whereas some formats feel like development is even detrimental to them because it just brings either degenerate strategies or just things that are not super enjoyable to play with. But in general, I feel like 4 months, which is, again, a third of the year. That's also partially why I liked that specifically with the Sun, Moon, and Ultra series. 3 to 4 months is about the sweet spot for me, because you're going to have at least 1 month of people testing out the waters, seeing what works. And then the first tournament, in normal times, where we have majors, the first tournaments roll around. You get interesting things out of them, and then you start building on those, and then you can get several waves of tournaments. But after a few times that you get waves of tournaments and people adapt, it sometimes just turns into rock paper scissors of team matchups. And at that point, it's just about the good point to refresh the metagame, find something new to play with, new toys. It doesn't always happen that way. For example, I don't think VGC 2015 happened that way, which is why a lot of people say that it could have continued for years, and I kind of agree with that.
If only.
I was about to say, I think Jake might have been one to think.
I am a massive 2015 fanboy, yes.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Just in general, back then I wasn't like the hugest fan of VGC 15, but in hindsight, I can see how it could have kept going and still been interesting. Whereas other formats, like for example, 2017, as much as I love 2017 personally, I think after the 13 months we got of it, it was about time for a change.
Yeah, I think 13 months is definitely a little excessive in most cases. And the one thing that I always regret about 2015 is we just never got to see the Abomasnow portion of the meta. It just never came about.
That might have happened in like the 7th year of 2015.
It's about as good as it gets for a Landers counter, but yeah, I think I mostly agree with you, Yuri. I feel like somewhere between 4 and 6 months is kind of where we start to see things either like aggressively stabilize or aggressively
Mhm.
destabilize, and I think you're mentioning degenerate strategies is like a pretty good way of putting it, and maybe this is actually an argument against some of the things that happened in 2015, where Smeargle usage
I
started to
was,
pop up right near the end
I
of
was
it,
about to say, what are you trying to say about Smirgle Tauros?
and then it just
Yeah,
like,
let's say
oh man, um,
Spherical Taurus was not the most fun and interactive team to play with, but it was an interesting
I
team.
brought it
I
to a
mean,
premiere challenge, and it was hilarious. I did really badly because it wasn't a good team, but it was really fun.
well, you just didn't coin flip well enough was the problem.
Sure.
But I mean, I guess the point being, I wasn't looking forward to future iterations of that team because it was already like continuing. Like there was a Metagross variant of it at some point. Anyway, um, my point
I
being,
think
yeah, go ahead, Yuri.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, finish your point because I was getting ready to move on.
Yeah. I think in general, the problem with degenerate strategies is that once they actually do roll around, even if the metagame develops, it's rare for the degenerate strategies themselves to go away. They can usually just sort of adapt, and it's just a clear negative.
Right. I think that's fair. As much as the casual viewership loves the degenerate strategies, it tends to detract from, the quality of a metagame. Completely agree with you.
Yeah, I agree. Like once King Torn became a thing in 2019, it was just all downhill from there.
I mean, that it's hard to call that degenerate just because it was
I
so
know,
defining, but I also hate
it was a
King
joke.
Torn.
I wouldn't call it degenerate. I just hate it.
We spent a long time hating
I
King
mean,
Torn on this podcast.
I personally liked none of Ultra, so I will just not comment on
Agreed.
that.
Agreed. So in the context of the metagame that we're now getting, we're gonna kind of change and focus a little bit more on just Series 6. We are affectionately kind of calling this, and I guess Jake can call it most with the most credentials, VGC UU, right? We've effectively like moved towards some of the things that Smogon does as a way of balancing its metagames. And obviously, balance was not in mind, where they just lopped off the top like 10 Pokemon, and there was no look at like percentages or votes or anything like that. But we are kind of like forced into all of a sudden this like second and third tier of Pokemon. Um, Becoming the new metagame, so to speak. Do you find this to be like a good and exciting way of introducing a new metagame, or do you think it's terrible to be removing like metagame staples?
So I think the problem is, in general, VGC as a community, let's say, has always been pretty good at finding staples in whatever the format offered. We always had to deal with restricted formats in the sense of dex restricted, and we just always kind of found things to play with. So it's not that I'm scared that we will not find good enough staples in Series 6 to have a format, despite the fact that Dynamax doesn't help in that sense. Just a bit more shade of Dynamax there. Dynamax makes it really hard for staples to actually be staples without a lot of other things being around. But in general, that's not too much of an issue. And just removing things with, like, let's say a blanket ban is awkward, and it's definitely like not the optimal way because it could create a healthier metagame, it could create a worse metagame. You just don't really know.
Yeah.
Instead of doing it the actual Smogon way, which is with criteria for every single ban and like reasoning, and that is more likely to lead to the metagame becoming better.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, but it's more likely to work that way. In this case, it's really whatever for me. It's just changing metagame. It's a new one. We have to figure out how things work. I haven't really worked on it yet much, because I still have a Series 5 tournament myself. But it's pretty much the same as just saying, oh, here's a new format with this dex. It's not particularly special.
Yeah.
It's not reasoned. So that's
if we
pretty
want
much
to
all there is to it.
if we want to make the full comparison to how Smogon does like UU and OU and stuff, UU is actually decided like the same way as this Series 6 basically was. It's all usage based. It's like I think it's every 3 months we have shifts. I know it's every 3 months we have shifts. And the Pokemon that have usage above a certain percentage are all get lopped off and labeled as OU, and anything in that category can't be used in UU. So like essentially it was decided the same way. The difference is that like for a format like Smogon UU, you can like change it afterwards to make sure it's not kind of like to make sure there aren't a couple like really crazy broken things that are just going to kind of run the format and have very limited counterplay. Like if that happens in Series 6, we're just kind of stuck with it. But if you're doing something that's more curated, like underused, then you have some chances to make it a little bit less not centralized, because centralization isn't a bad thing, but like just less entirely dominated by like one or two things. And I think that's the main difference here is that I don't mind the usage criteria. Like that's if you're gonna pick some Pokemon to ban because of the best, I think that's the easiest and most fair way to do it. I probably wouldn't have included singles in ours and doubles in singles, but that's probably a different conversation. But
I think the main difference the main difference for me is that I think this relates less to UU to OU and more to from OU to Ubers. In the way I see it, because even though it is usage based, which is similar to how UU and OU work, the idea there is that you are actually technically kind of creating a different metagame, whereas we're not really creating a different metagame. There's not something above this.
Right.
This is all we have, and we just got bans to a tier that's. I mean, people play Ubers, but in my experience when I was around Smogon, it was more of the tier, like the less important tier.
I won't comment on that one.
I wouldn't say that way. Like, I actually personally loved Ubers in some generations when I played it in singles, not doubles. I haven't played doubles Ubers.
Oh, don't. But just please don't. Magerna is crazy. Don't touch the Ubers.
Oh yeah, but in general, what I mean is overuse is the single most played tier, and so that relates to the VGC in the sense that the most played tier is our OU, which is VGC, and we're not moving to underused, because a lot of the Pokemon that would still be considered OU by usage are still there. I don't remember what the usage stats are for singles and OU and stuff, but we're just removing a lot of things, and we're also not getting anything new. When there are shifts, there are usually also Pokemon that drop to underused, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's also a big difference.
I think also just the sheer number of Pokemon that get lopped off between OU and UU has a significant impact compared to this tier shift where we're effectively getting, I guess we could make an argument that like Gyarados and P2 were part of it, but like we're not counting Hippowdon and Mimikyu, which had fallen pretty much out of usage. It's like we lost 14 Pokemon, so there's still a huge chunk of Pokemon and like the metagame that still exists, and there are still like almost entire teams that are still intact. So I guess that is to me a little bit more interesting, because in the separation between OU and UU, you're like destroying most of the things that were popular, with the exception of some of the niches. But like a lot of teams that were at or near the top of the metagame still exist.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of Porygon Z teams, for example, didn't really lose much, and they only gained a lot. I was looking at my team builder the other day, and I realized I had a Porygon Z team that is completely legal except for a Gyarados on it, which I can replace, and the entire rest of the team is still valid, and that was most of what worked in the first place, and a lot of threats to it got removed. Porygon Z is going to be crazy in Series 6, but that's another issue.
I saw a calc the other day that was like Porygon Z, Max Strike, Okoing, and Dynamax Duraludon or something like that. Like,
I don't think it's
I think it was. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know, but it was still.
Bad. I think it probably does like 90.
It's crazy.
Yeah, only
the
90.
point is that it does entirely too much.
Yeah, it does a million damage. So at the end, kind of the last question I have, as far as like opening up a UU format, is this is kind of something that like the casual fan base has clamored for a really long time, right? Where they're like, oh, everybody uses legendaries and the top 8 Pokemon in the format's stupid, VGC is stupid, everything's stupid. So now we have this like interesting situation where all of these kind of like underused Pokemon potentially are being pushed to the top. So do you think that this is, good for the viewership of VGC as a whole, or do you feel like all that's going to happen? I'll tell you what I think is going to happen is things are going to centralize anyway, and we're going to go back to having the same conversations we've had for a decade.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said.
Yeah.
Realistically, Dynamax formats centralize less, but they will still centralize anyway. We will find things to centralize around. There will be probably a lot of Durant and a lot of Porygon Z and hyper-offensive teams like those. And they will most likely have a lot in common. Lots of good Pokemon still exist anyway. And they'll just be better because they have less checks. For example, Amoonguss, I think, lost several checks to it.
I just would have assumed that
least,
Amoonguss was in the top 10, honestly. I was so surprised that it wasn't one of the bans, but...
Yeah. It at the very least lost Togekiss as a check, and Incineroar. Yeah, Amoonguss is very much stronger than before, and the metagame is still going to centralize, and casual viewership is still going to be complaining about it, and it's just how it is. And I don't think that's... I think that's just a cycle we would never get out of.
Yeah. It'd be really interesting to me if this happened in a format like 2015 instead of somewhere like now. Because if you take like the top 10 Pokemon of 2015 and remove them, I think 2015 becomes like an entirely different format. It's because like so much of it was centered around like the best 3 or 4 megas and then like the genies and Amoonguss and Crest and like whatever else was on Chalk. But without those, it becomes really crazy different. But now like obviously we're used to all these Pokemon being at the top. Like it's going to be weird not having Togekiss, like you mentioned. That's one of the biggest ones. Dragapult's been pretty big the entire format, but it's not like I don't think the identity changes as much here as it would for a different format. It'd be also kind of funny to see if this would happen in like a legendary format or like the 2016 and 2019.
Yeah, I saw people joking about that on Twitter where you just knock Xerneas Groudon out and see what happens.
Right.
I think most other formats, again, that don't have Dynamax, because Dynamax made it so that many more Pokemon are viable, which people can argue whether it's good or bad, but from an objective standpoint, a lot more Pokemon have high usage overall. Mm-hmm. Whereas in other formats, they were more centralized than this. Even the ones that were considered not very centralized, if you look at, for example, VGC 2017, if you remove the top 10, I am almost 100% sure that all the 4 Tapus would be in the top 10.
I would think so.
And that just changes the format completely.
Right.
You remove all the Tapus, you remove Arcanine, you remove the most used Ultra Beasts, and...
Garchomp, probably.
I don't know what... Yeah, Garchomp. The format is completely different.
Yeah.
Nothing in common. Same for 2015, as you said, and a lot of other formats, I believe. For example, in 2018, you would remove probably all of Metagross, Gengar, and Charizard, realistically. Yep. Different format. Just different. Completely
Carnivore's time.
Whereas now, a lot of the identity is conserved, partially thanks to Dusclops dodging the ban.
That one surprised me.
What was it, 11?
It dodged the ban thanks to P2 existing.
What is it, 11? Was it 11th in the VGC usage? Like...
I don't remember,
I've been meaning
honestly
to go look at that and see who dodged it narrowly. But I did just want to briefly observe that if we knocked the top 10 off in 2015, it would arguably make Abomasnow worse, because Chalk was like one of its best matchups.
No one cares!
Incredible. Whatever you do, Abomasnow is going to become worse.
All fire types removed from the game. I had thought of one more question. So do you think that in general, I think you might have answered this question already, in that your perception, this is just like kind of another whatever way to deliver a format, but do you feel like this is something like lopping off based on usage is like something that you'd be interested in seeing like further down the road as far as a rotating format, or do you think that there are better other ways to balance for TPCI?
I think it's just a whatever way to change format, and honestly, like, it's fine by me. They can do it the same way. Obviously, personally, I would like formats to change with competitiveness in mind. As someone who plays usually when there isn't COVID around, 12 majors a year, just about. Competitiveness is obviously important to me.
That's a good point.
And I don't think this is the best way to change it that way. And it would be really nice if they had. It wouldn't have to be like Smogon, like a voting system with the players, but they could have context with at least, either top performing players or players from like Reza, who doesn't really play anymore, but could be like an excellent contact to understand how metagames should work. And that, in general, that would probably be healthier, let's say.
Well, I think that would be ideal.
Right.
But they've kind of recoiled at the idea of kind of doing that at any point. I think there was like a support ticket campaign to get Smeargle banned in 2016, and we couldn't even get that done. So it seems like that's kind of like unlikely for them to actually make targeted bans with balance in mind. Because I think I agree with you. I think that's ideal. Like if TPCI actually set out to try and balance its own formats, we've solved a lot of problems as far as like some of the things that have, at least Pokemon wise, plagued VGC over the years. But I'd be surprised to see that anytime soon.
I think usage-based tiering like that is sustainable on a larger scale than what we've done with Series 6. Like, if we're just going back to the UU example again, like, there are like probably 30 to 40 Pokemon that are like OU labeled, so like can't be used and underused. And that gives the tiers like two separate identities, which I think is good. But just like lopping off the top 10 of a random format like VGC Series 5, like there's still a lot of Pokemon that are like pretty key to the format's identity that still gets like in. Like we just talked about Dusclops. Like I don't think the formats are different enough for this to be something that is repeatable, because it's just like it's not much of a change, and what change is happening is probably, I'm not gonna say it's for the worse, but it's not like, I guess I used sustainable before, but I don't know.
It's not for the best either.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I agree with you. That's also partially why I was talking. I don't know why I didn't word it right that way back then. But when I was saying the Ubers thing, it's also in that sense that Pokemon go to Ubers way less than Pokemon go to OU from UU. And like if you blanket ban like the top 40 usage, that actually changes the format completely. I still think the format is going to be pretty different, but the identity is still kind of similar.
Yeah.
I think to me, at worst, at least right now, I mean, we could look back in hindsight in a couple months and think this was like the worst thing that ever happened. But at the very least, right now, it's just something new, which I guess is what
it's
they're
also super
for,
low impact.
Right.
Like, especially now that Players' Cup is over, like, there's not really any, well, there's nothing official that we know of. But even like the online tournaments that we do have, all the grassroots stuff, like none of that is like super like earth-shatteringly important. Like,
right.
The Victory Road tournaments and Rose Tower, that kind of stuff. Like obviously those are great and it's awesome that we have them and people enjoy them, but like those being played in a suboptimal format is much less impactful than us having like an NAIC and Worlds in a weird format. So like I guess this is a good time to experiment. Maybe that's what they're using this year for, but
I think it's kind of funny. I know Yuree mentioned this earlier, but if it was like if we did just overlay this over a typical circuit, it would have deprived us of another post-Worlds format. All right, so
I mean, I'll be completely honest. Deprive me of Venusaur post-Worlds format. And
oh, that's true. Is that what it was going to be? Okay, then I'll say thank you. Oh God, Venusaur. So Yuree, I know you touched on a little bit some of your thoughts as far as what was going to be good or what the format was going to look like, and that it was probably going to be hyper offensive and revolve around stuff like Porygon and Durant. But do you have any like bold predictions or hot takes as far as what this format is going to be?
I don't really have bold predictions or anything. It's mostly, I think, a lot of hyper-offensive Pokemon are going to be good. Amoonguss is going to be amazing, as probably the best supportive Pokemon right now. It lost so many checks. And the one bulky Pokemon that is probably still going to be good is Lapras, because, it's the only Pokemon that can really afford to go bulky still, thanks to Aurora Veil.
Yeah, that's like the last remaining defensive team.
And even that is probably going to have to go more offensive, realistically,
Uh-huh.
in this format. More like towards the life orb variants. And it doesn't have Rillaboom for late game shuffling. Or like the most recent Lapras teams, even the offensive ones, still had, after you set up a Revel, you have Rillaboom and Snore shuffling for the mid to late game.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's not a thing anymore, unless you want to play Thwacky and Torracat. So
I don't think
I've seen people doing
I think
Thwacky
Thwacky's
packs.
actually going to be okay, to be honest. Like, obviously not as good as
Thwacky-
Rillaboom, but I think it's going to be usable. It still will check stuff like Primarina and Random Wash.
Thwacky could be a Pokemon.
It could be
I
a
agree.
Pokemon. What was I just going to say? I forget. I had a funny thing to say and now it's gone.
Well, I'll do my bold prediction then. I think Ninetales is going to be popular.
Oh, I
I
remembered
think
my funny
that-
thing.
Sun Ninetales?
Huh? No, like Kanto,
So-
the sun one, the fire one.
Yeah, Sun.
Yeah, because like
It's just another
Venusaur is
hyper
gone, we
offense
know.
team. Yeah.
yeah, Venusaur and Torkoal are gone, but Charizard's still around, and Charizard Ninetales is really scary because it's kind of the more hyper offensive version of Sun. This is something that DOU's picked up on. DOU has picked up on. Like Sun is really common in DOU, and it's always Ninetales, and it's like never Torkoal anymore. And part of that's because Trick Room isn't really in a great spot in DOU. But like Ninetales is fast, it hits pretty hard, it has Nasty Plot, which is a set that a lot of people run. But I just think it's cool for like
Does not sound like a VGC set. Wait, DOU is Dynamax banned, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense with the
Right.
Nasty
Yeah,
Plot.
true. That's a good point. I think it's cool. I think it has a lot of utility that Torkoal doesn't, and I think after Series 6, if Ninetales becomes a thing, and then they like unban everything, I think Ninetales will still have like a spot on some teams.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
think
hot
so.
take.
Yeah, I can agree
That
with
makes
that.
sense. The one thing that I just want to observe is like I'm gonna preface this by saying I think Santi's a super good dude, and that I was excited that he won Players Cup. But him winning a Series 5 tournament with Colossal where it's not getting banned is so cursed, so
Oh, yeah.
absolutely cursed that we're gonna have to deal with like a wave of Colossal popularity right as a lot of its huge checks are getting banned.
At least like its best surf support is now
That's
like
true.
Weavile.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, it's best surf, right? You could still aqua jet it and things like
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah, you can still Aqua Jet with the other
Let's
thing,
not-
but you can redirect.
Let's
that,
not forget
so.
about Dracloak. Okay, it's still here.
what's its speed though? It's not
How
fast.
fast is
I honestly have
Dracloak?
no idea.
Is that
I know Dreepy is very fast because the other. This is kind of a tangent. The other day I was
It's
thinking
tangents.
Dragapult has 2 Dreepies on its head.
Yes.
So, if it has 2 Dreepies on its head, it should have like at least double Dreepy stats. And it turns out that it has less than double Dreepy stats in a lot of the stats. And Dreepy is like 81 speed
Oh,
or
wow.
Oh
something.
damn. Okay. I was gonna say
Either way, Dracloak
if they were.
speed Tie Chomp.
Was it really?
Wow.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so interesting. I'm a little concerned that you know all of that, Yuree, but like it works in context because we were talking about it. Okay. So yeah, I think again, at the very least, it'll be interesting and it'll be fun and new, and we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about this in 2 months, and find out how we liked Series 6. So let's move on to the latter portions of our podcast here. So Yuree, I think you said you did have a question prepared for us. So if you do have that, please feel free to fire away.
Yes, so as a VGC player, I have a brand to protect. My brand is hating pineapple on pizza.
Your brand is hating it.
Now I can, yes.
Oh.
Now I can accept that some people eat it. I did not judge it too much before trying it myself. A lot of Italians are hating me right now for the fact that I have tried it. I was forced. Sorry, guys. I consider it very bad, but now I have to ask you people's opinions on this. I think I already have a bit of the opinion on Brendan's, but I want to hear it to make sure.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we talked about it in Postbook United chat at some point. But so here, first of all, okay, so my biggest problem, first of all, with pineapple pizzas is that they also have ham on them, and I really don't like ham. So that's like the first thing that I'm not a huge fan of, and also I just don't like pineapple on pizza. I don't understand it. I just think that like of all the things that you could put on a pizza, like why would you put a pineapple on there? It doesn't taste good. These two things are both very good when you separate them from each other, and it just like detracts from both pizza and pineapple when you put them together. I will not seek it out. I would never.
I plead the fifth.
Nope, you can't.
That is
I
not
like
allowed.
it. I enjoy it. Hawaiian
And
pizza is
we're
my
going
favorite
to-
kind of pizza.
Oh, it's your
And-
favorite kind of pizza?
Listen, I love ham. Ham is like my favorite thing.
Oh
like,
my god.
I love everything ham related. So I really like ham on pizza. I tried Hawaiian once and I was like, oh, this is really good. And so if you ask me like, what is your favorite kind of pizza? I would answer Hawaiian, and I'm like 300% not sorry about it.
Oh no. What a bad
if you
opinion.
could see my face right now. Oh my god.
It's good that I didn't say
regret-
before we did this podcast, because Yuree just might have left. I mean, that might have
I
happened.
regret everything.
Oh my goodness.
Oh god.
I also I don't get why
Oh,
this
boy.
is such a big deal. Like,
Because
I'm
it's
not gonna make-
cursed.
I'm not gonna make fun of someone for putting green peppers on their pizza, even though I would never eat it. Like,
Well, it's different because the people that started the pineapple on pizza is terrible thing is the makers of pizza, Italians. We're the ones that hate it.
It's coming
and
right from the
constantly-
horse's mouth, Jake, okay?
no,
and constantly talk about it.
I
If,
can't even argue
for
that.
example,
You are damned
For
by
example.
an entire culture.
as someone who enjoys sushi, if a Japanese person came to me and told me that the way sushi is done here is absolutely terrible and just
That's a great
disrespectful
point.
and just completely and utterly inedible, I would be like, you might have a point here.
No, listen, I'm not trying to claim that it's like natural or like the right way to eat it or the best way to eat it. I
You
just
heard
like
it here.
it,
Jake
so I'm
hates
gonna eat it.
Italians. Jake hates Italy and Italians.
No.
You heard it here first.
Oh no.
Oh, great question, Yuri. Okay. And I'll turn it to Jake for his little portion of the podcast here.
Music! Yay! Okay, so it's been 6 weeks, I think, since our last podcast. Maybe
Have
a
we
little-
talked about folklore on here yet?
No, actually, it's been a month. No, I went back and made sure we hadn't.
Oh
Our
my
last
God.
our last episode was the weekend before Folklore came out. So like
Oh
I wrote
my
that down
goodness.
as like, obviously me and Brendan are gonna rant about Folklore because it's amazing. One of my favorite thing about it is that my hometown in Orlando, not my hometown in Florida, outside Orlando, is actually mentioned in the bonus track, the lakes, because my hometown is named after Windermere, which is like a big lake in England, and she talks about it, which I think is pretty cool. Other than that, one of my favorite bands, probably my favorite band, Mr. Wives, also released an album at the same time as Folklore, and it's called Super Bloom, and it's amazing. So I've listened to that a whole lot. And then like in the last week, I have 3 because it's been a while. In the last week or 2, I've really started listening to a band called Hot Milk a lot. And I know that's a weird name, and I'm not debating that. But they remind me of like Riot era Paramore, when it's really cool because they're kind of like pop punky. But it's all their songs are like really. They only have like 7 songs I know. They're pretty new. But I've had them all like on repeat. And my favorite one is called "Are You Feeling Alive?" And I recommend that highly.
You know, warm milk has its place in society, but I'm not sure how I feel about hot milk.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just gonna hold myself back and just say that like Folklore by Taylor Swift is just like one of the best albums I've ever heard. I'm a little bit biased, but like I can't stop listening to it, and it's been out for what, like over a month now. It's just
Yeah.
like is such a transcendent album, and it's God. I'm like actively having to stop myself here. So if you really want to talk about it, feel free to like get in my DMs and I'll fangirl. But I'll stop for now.
I will say that Blake Hopper was a noted hater of Lover, and has not been much of a Taylor Swift fan, but even he thinks Folklore is amazing. So just gonna throw that out there.
King.
Well, that means I might have to check it out myself because I haven't.
Oh, you should. I highly encourage you to do so, Yuri. Especially if you want to like hop into your feels for a couple hours, like
Oh, man.
by all means. All right, what you got? Anything?
Me?
Yeah.
Honestly, unfortunately, I don't really listen to a lot of music that comes out. I have a weird relationship with music. a lot of what I listen to is video game
Oh,
music.
okay.
I
I think
cool.
that's what
Judge
Tommy
me
was
all you
talking
want.
about too. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what I listen to is video game music, so it's often related to what I have played recently. For example, for Players' Cup, both the Invitational and the finals, to calm myself before the tournament, as I was stressing, I was listening to a lot of Celeste music,
Ooh, cool.
since I played that relatively recently, a few months ago. For like actual non-video game music, I mostly listen to things I grew up with. A lot of that is, as much as it pains me to say it, emo / punk rock or classic rock.
We
Or
stand so
things like
hard.
that.
Yeah.
Jeez. I still listen to that. You know what I was listening to on the car ride home? All Time Low.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up listening to Queen
Mhm.
and things around that.
Cool.
And then, I don't know, I've listened to a lot of, not a lot of, I've listened to Green Day recently for the
Ooh.
first time in years.
Love
Because American Idiot is very topical right now.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much my experience with music recently.
Nice. Yeah, Green Day's great. Dookie is one of my favorite albums of all time. That's so
Yeah.
good. Such a good album. All right, so that's gonna do it for the Yuree portion of our podcast here this week. So Yuree, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my favorite guest questions. I think that's one of the first ones that's evoked an emotional response in me. So like, congratulations on that one. But yeah, thanks so much for coming by.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
All right, so you can look forward to our switch into Series 6 in just a week, but we're going to step away for just a few seconds, and Jake and I will be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us into the ultimate and final portion of episode 23 this week. As we appreciate everybody that continues to listen to the podcast, because I know we've kind of been putting everything out a little bit more sporadically, but we're trying to maintain the quality of our podcast instead of just kind of like eating them out there every couple weeks. And without a whole lot going on, I feel like this is probably the way that we're going to continue to do things for the foreseeable future, is just kind of like pump one out when there's stuff going on and when you feel like we can produce a good second half, specifically with relevant content and a good guest and everything like that. So I feel like we delivered on all of those promises this week. So, the frequency might not be the same, but the podcast will be.
Yeah, nicely put. I think we just want to make sure that we're both like proud of whatever we're putting out, and I don't think we could get to that point if we're just trying to force things out every 2 weeks without anything to talk about. So,
agreed.
Our idea mill is still running. We're not going anywhere, but we just want to make sure that we're making good stuff and not just making stuff for the sake of it. As always, you can find our socials at Soundproofcast for the podcast, at MrBjog46VGC for Brendan, at MajorWoman_ for me, at Yuree VGC for Yuree. I realized we didn't ask him to plug himself, so that's his. I know he streams on Twitch too. So go follow him.
He's Yuree's VGC on Twitch too.
Yeah.
He has this incentive sometimes where you can use your channel points to make him wear a whole bunch of hats. So sometimes he's just like wearing like 6 or 7 hats at the same time.
Amazing.
And every time I get a notification that he's streaming, I make sure to go in and make sure that he has the maximum number of hats on.
That's perfect.
I didn't want to say it while he was on because I know it annoys him. Alright, so yeah, he streams. Go check him out. His streams are actually a lot of fun. He plays Celeste in between. We'll make sure we get our plugs in, even though he's departed now.
Yep.
His streams are cool. Highly recommend. Alright, so that'll do it for episode 23. Please look out for our next podcast within the next month or so. We'll probably have one out. And next time there's more to talk about, but we're looking forward to getting another one out for you guys. So thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you again next time.